It's Thursday, September 30th, 2021, and an end of a pretty damn good month here with our shows. We are doing well. We had a 2-1 day yesterday, but Tony Finn's three-team parlay, which was the Dodgers, the Giants, which won 1-0, and that sums up their year. 1-0 win. And Seattle came through, paid off 2.7 to 1. And that was a very nice win. We lost with the Yankees, but we won with my over Philadelphia bet by the slimmest of margins. Actually, it was an 8 line. They scored 9 runs, but I was kind of thinking both teams would score 7 runs in that game, Rob, but a win's a win, right?
A win is a win, John. They don't pay us extra for winning by more than the point spread says. So if they did, it would be better.
Oh, I would like it.
Until they bring that style of, British index betting to us. I guess you could do it. I mean, that's always a prop bet on most screens where you can pick the exact, total, 14, whatever. But they don't pay us extra for just a regular bet on side or total. So we'll take it. Win by a half, win by
absolutely
40.5. Who cares?
I remember probably 10, 15 years ago, England had that progressive betting where you paid by how much you lost. Right. Like if you lost by 30 points to the spread, it was 30 times your bet. Yeah. If you won by that much, it was 30 times. But that, that is a form of insanity, in my opinion, because you cannot predict when a team like Minnesota is going to lose to Bowling Green as a 31.5 point favorite. You'd be selling the house and the BMW.
Yeah, you're going to pay that one off for a while, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's an oucher. Let me see what, I know Tony Finn is joining us. All right.
All right.
Yeah, he's backstage. I have him here ready to come on, but he doesn't look like he's knows that his video is working and not his mic. In fact, I can definitely tell that he. Yeah. We should not put him on the air until he knows that he's on the air.
We better get him a text so he understands we're on.
Yeah, I sent one. If we both bomb him with one here.
Yeah. Let's see if we can get him.
So while we do that, we'll update the Sanderson's Farms Championship, Rob.
All right.
And we have a Sahith Thigada is the leader. He was not in my lineups, but it's only day one. But here we go. We have a new season. Surprisingly, a lot of the top 50 guys are playing in this that played in the Ryder Cup, one of which is Sergio Garcia. But your top players in the world are not here. Sam Burns is arguably the favorite in this event. Nick Wadney is playing well. He's 7 under. Howard Varner III was on my list yesterday. He's 7 under, 1 shot back, so that's good. Adam Hadwin, he came at a very cheap price. And Patton Kazire, as I mentioned on the show yesterday, was to win top 10, top 20. Sung Ga Im had a nice day. Corey Connors. Looks like Sam Burns is right there. He's tied for 14th, 4 under. A lot of names here that were on my list of 17 are doing pretty good. Just want to scroll down here. It's a pretty large tournament. A lot of first-time players, actually. You have 24 from the junior tour, which I can't remember the name, Corn Ferry Tour. They're playing, and we don't have. It's kind of an interesting lineup. If you don't mind, I'm just going to check my lineup here just to be able to tell where I'm at here in some of these, but it has to be pretty decent. Nothing worth bragging about now. That's for, yeah. And it's in Mississippi. Some of these guys are teeing off. They're probably just getting to the back nine. So there's still a lot of golf left to go for these players. Now let's see if we can see Mr. Finn. I don't know, Rob. He doesn't have his headphone in.
I don't know.
Or does he?
We both tried to. Oh, there he is.
Mr. Finn. He doesn't have his headphones on.
Nice. Singing to himself. I think the audience, I know they like that, but we can't take the chance of what might come out of his mouth.
Yes.
During the time that he's unaware.
It's the multiple syllable words that I'm concerned most about.
Right. I mean, it would be comical just to stare at him for the next 15 minutes, but we're too scared to do that, so we apologize to the audience who might want to see that.
I'll keep an eye on him here. I can see him.
So funny.
Well, there he just played with his ear, but I can't tell where he put his headphone on. Anyway, that's the golf story. We have a wild weekend of football coming up. That's for sure. Now he left the studio.
Yep. Went to get the tequila.
Yeah, I guess.
I'm trying to figure out. He's got to be watching something. There was daytime baseball. Something's not going his way, it looked like to me. But anyway.
Yeah, so only mathematically are the Phillies alive, so that is over. But we have the battle with the Dodgers and the Giants. And I actually had a premium bet that I put out before the show, not to be opposite of Tony, but I was on Arizona, and I thought getting that kind of price was a good side. The way Tony played it with the parlay made a lot of sense too. And in hindsight, I should have used that parlay as a hedge to my Arizona bet, and that would have been pretty darn smart in hindsight. But college football this week is going to be crazy. Got Indiana come into Happy Valley. That's going to be the stripe out, and I'm not going to explain what that is. It's pretty obvious, but it's 111,000 fans, and Indiana is going to hear it, especially after the way they won against Penn State that was the opening week when Indiana elected to go for a 2-point conversion to win the game instead of sending it into overtime. And whether that was a score or not, I still do not know. But there wasn't enough to overturn it. Indiana won. Penn State goes into a tailspin. Those days are far, far behind. And now ranked number 4. I was saying this a lot on the shows this week, that right now, are they the number 4 best team in the country? No. Is Ohio State the 19th ranked team in the country? No. Is Iowa still overrated in my opinion? Yes. Does Maryland have a chance to win tomorrow night? Absolutely. So that's just one example of how these rankings are just, it's almost like a recency poll, because they don't take into consideration the fact that, for instance, Penn State has to go to Ohio State to play. They're not likely to be favored in that game, even if they are ranked number 4 or 3. Ohio State, by that point, will be back into the top 10, I would think. And maybe I'm giving too much credit to that team. But Clemson is 2-2. Certainly not the team we thought they were going to be, and have dropped off considerably. I do think the Georgia line, Rob, against Arkansas at 18.5. I was wondering what you think of that one, because Georgia's been steamrolling everybody, but Arkansas is playing pretty solid football on both sides of the ball. But it is, the line's telling me that this has blowout written all over it. It's too tempting to me. It's too easy to take Arkansas plus 18.5. And I was wondering if you share those thoughts about that game. And of course, if you don't have anything on that game, that's fine. Or if it's a Big Ten or 5%er for you, then we don't need to talk about it either.
I was just digging through here, John, because I've talked about so many college football games this week. I've got just a pile of notes here, and I was looking for the Arkansas-Georgia notes when I did that game. Listen, I could start by saying that the power ratings, as I look here off to my right at my other computer, the power ratings I keep show Georgia at home as a 19.5-point favorite, so this line seems to be in order. Maybe a little shade towards Arkansas, but the 1 point could just be a difference between me and the odds makers and what we've rated. Their number could be a straight-up number. There's a couple of things here. The first thing, the most important thing about this game was Arkansas quarterback KJ Jefferson, who got a knee injury last week, but he looks like he's good to go. He's been practicing in a knee brace all week long, so we expect him to play in this game. Then, of course, outside of what's going to go on the field, you have Arkansas head coach Sam Pittman coming back to Georgia, where he was the offensive line coach before he took the Arkansas job. And last year, these two teams also played each other in the opening week of the season. That game, to everybody's surprise, was 7-5 Arkansas at halftime. Georgia explosion in the third quarter, which included a pick six, and they wind up running away with it 37-10. So many things are different from then. For one, where Georgia's concerned, JT Daniels was not the quarterback. The quarterback still wasn't even decided. What they had for quarterback that day was DeJuan Mathis, who has ended up at Temple, backed up by Stetson Bennett, who came in the second half of the game and actually pulled away for Georgia. And Stetson Bennett went out to play a few weeks before JT Daniels was healed and got the job that he should have got. So there's a lot different, but then there's a lot that's the same. Arkansas was a team that I had earmarked in the offseason. We're always looking as bettors, handicappers for teams that nobody else is going to pay attention to. And when you're Arkansas in the SEC West, nobody's paying attention to you. You didn't do anything last year to cause anybody to pay attention. But if you look close, you would see some progression in Arkansas's play as the season ended. They got better. And then if you watch spring practices and follow the team, you see that they all bought in, and there could be something brewing in Arkansas that, while everybody's paying attention to Auburn, is LSU going to come back? Is Mississippi going to be the team to catch Alabama? All these other teams that generate headlines out of the SEC West, none of them are called Arkansas. And sure enough, if you liked them and you played them against Texas, you wound up cashing a ticket. If you came right back and played them against Texas A&M, and those just aren't, lucky win tickets, John. Those were Arkansas destructions of those two teams. We see Texas now, and I think that's a sign of how good Arkansas is on the defensive side. But they outgained both of those teams. They outgained Texas A&M last week by about 161 yards. And for a team that's supposed to be so elite defensively, A&M, and they got steamrolled by Arkansas's offensive line. A lot of times we'll say, and a lot of us truly believe, that this game of football is won at the line of scrimmage. Your offensive line, your defensive line, that's where it's won. And the fact that Sam Pittman is an offensive line coach, and you watch Arkansas a couple of these games, their offensive line, they're really good. Georgia's going to be in for a dogfight, that's for sure. I think that because they're Arkansas, there's still a lot of question marks in people's heads. Oh, man, I could see them getting blown out. Last year they lost by 27 when they were decidedly worse than Georgia was. This year they're getting 18.5. Can they close that gap of 27-17? Are they 10 points better? Or in some way, shape, or form, are they 10 points better and Georgia 10 points worse? The combination of both. It would have to be all on Arkansas' side being better, because Georgia's certainly better. They haven't gone backwards.
Yeah, they are.
So, things that I trust and don't trust, I'll go back to last week. I bet Arkansas because I don't trust Jimbo Fisher as a head coach. Too traditional, too conservative offensively. In ways, even though they run the air raid, I still don't trust Kirby Smart. Too traditional, too conservative, although Todd Monken's pulling the strings to that air raid. So sometimes these coaches, Jim Harbaugh is a great example at Michigan, they just don't give up full control to their coordinators They like to
Great
pull the
point.
reins back. And in a tight game, will Kirby Smart get tight? And, tell Monken, hey, cut it out with the throws downfield. We need to run the ball and, put this game away. I don't know. I know there's going to be a lot of emotion on the Arkansas side for their head coach. These players genuinely love the head coach, and he's coming back to his old stomping ground, so they'll play for him. Again, the question becomes, are they within 18.5 points of Georgia? I kind of think so. I think the role that they're on right now probably indicates so. But you have to – your one concern here would be if they can't run the football, if Georgia proves to be too stout in the front seven and KJ Jefferson has to pass. And this is a guy who has never completed 50% of his passes. 2 years in college football, under 50%. This year I think he's at 54 or something, but, everything's going well. There's a couple of non-conference games in there with overmatched opponents. So I don't know against the Georgia defense can we put a lot of credence into that. To me, the guy's still a 50% or less accuracy passer, and if he's forced to win the game, that could lead to, 14 points either scored or set up by the defense. There's a lot to worry about there. Quarterback-wise, you trust J.T. Daniels a heck of a lot more than you trust K.J. Jefferson without a running game. If the running game's going, John, this is a 60-minute battle. If Arkansas can push Georgia around the way they did to A&M and the way they did to Texas, it's 60 minutes. Georgia's in for a dogfight. So we'll see. I guess it's what side of the fence do you stand on? Do you believe after watching them play Texas A&M and with all the hype that Texas A&M's defense comes with, it's an elite defense. It's a you can't run on it defense. Arkansas proved that to be a myth last week. So do you put Texas A&M's front seven on par with Georgia's? I'm not real sure about that because I think Georgia's an outstanding defense. Georgia, I probably fall in the category with a lot of people right now who believe that Georgia's probably your best team in the country. They still don't get their power ratings-wise, but the eye test says Georgia's probably at this point playing better than anyone else. Alabama still going to have something to say about that for sure. But we'll see. 18.5 just looks like a lot of points.
It does, and this doesn't mean that Georgia would lose, but Smart is 0-7 against the number in home games after covering as a double-digit favorite. All right, so that's a history lesson. I don't know what kind of predictive power it really has. Probably zero. It's the same thing with Pittman. He has an 8-0 angle that in the first half of the season he hasn't not covered the spread. But he hasn't been there that long. And that's really the only major stuff I saw. I did see that Trayton Burks is probable for wide receiver for Arkansas, so that's huge. And then you mentioned KJ Jefferson's knee, but he's listed as probable. So I think it was just a bruise, and he's good to go. And listed as probable at the college level means you're playing.
Yeah, and he's been at practice all week long. Like I say, with a knee brace, I think that's more precautionary than anything else. Probably not going to miss this game. Arkansas's got a real good point spread record, ATS record, in games under Sam Pittman. But I'll caution everybody by saying this. That record, in most cases, is built upon Arkansas being undervalued by odds makers and by the public. It's only now, as we hit this Georgia game this week, it's the first time where Arkansas has even been a consideration in most of the nation's mind. All of a sudden, Arkansas is drawing attention. And as I said, with the power ratings, I have Georgia 19.5, the line's 18.5. It's probably the first time that, since Sam Pittman's been there, that Arkansas has not been undervalued. They're probably priced as close to properly as you can have at this point. If they go out and win the game Saturday straight up, we'll know that they're still undervalued. But my point being that they've been getting excessive points in the point spread, and they've been covering. They've been better than people thought. The average fan outside of Fayetteville, Arkansas, now considers Arkansas a threat after what they've done 2 of the 4 weeks this year. I mean, if we just we're not out of September yet, John. If you and I were doing this show September 1 with a couple other guys, most would not have even given Arkansas a second thought. I know we have colleagues of ours who were very, very strong on Texas, the week of Texas-Arkansas. Smart guys, great handicappers,
Yep.
but the belief in Arkansas wasn't there. It's getting there now with just about everybody because there's pause in their bet, right? They're like, well, 18 and a half, just like you said, 18 and a half, everybody seems to think that's too much now. 3 weeks ago, people might have said, I'll lay 18 and a half with Georgia. They'll crush that team.
Oh, you're right.
Times change.
You're absolutely right.
Times change.
Yep.
And for those who don't know, Treylon Burks, the guy John mentioned as playing wide receiver, he's an NFL wide receiver. If, God, I'll probably get this right, but if I don't, if you're watching the game, you're looking for number 16 on the perimeter. Georgia will pay a lot of attention to him, and if the running game is going, it's better for him because obviously it opens up the pass. If he's getting a lot of attention because the running game isn't going, that's probably not good for him because Georgia has athletes that can cover as well. So, Arkansas's got talent. There's talent there. It's not just, Phil Steele's magazine picks him 7th Arkansas or whatever he was picked by. I shouldn't just single out Phil Steele. That's not right of me. I mean, there's a zillion publications during the off season that gave no credence to Arkansas whatsoever, and here they are 4-0 with a chance. John, they got a chance. I mean, we look at Mississippi, Alabama this week, right? And a lot of people like Mississippi. Look how that line's come down. If Arkansas beats Georgia, when the time comes for Arkansas to play Alabama, they're in line to win the SEC West at that point probably. So it's a big game. Both sides, it's a big game.
It is, and I've been wanting to do this all day. I'm pulling up out of the database 2 ranked teams in the top 10, and the favorite is 17 or more points. And I have a funny feeling it's not going to be many.
It shouldn't be, but like you said, those rankings are it's why we don't pay attention to them.
Yeah. And that's why that's a great point because that's why it would possibly give us some intelligence because it's not reflective of the future schedule. It's just like, okay, if the season ended today, this is how the season would end, and that's all it's really good for.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what else it's not reflective of when they do those rankings. I mean, first of all, in college football, you only play a team once. So you get the benefit of playing them at home. You win. You rise in the polls. The other team sinks. But it gives no consideration to what might have happened if it was a 2-game series and the game was played on the other team's field. Maybe they win. So why do they sink 10 spots and the other team rise 10 spots? So there's a lot of things flawed with a ranking system. I think that's why bettors keep power ratings. We'd rather have a raw strength of the team's talent rather than – oh, you lost to this team, so you drop 6, and you won, you move up 4. Like you said, maybe Penn State's not 4. Maybe they're not, but is there anybody at this point in time that deserves 4 over Penn State? Maybe not. Got to let it shake out.
And the same thing for Ohio State. You can't tell me that there's that much difference between Penn State and Ohio State.
Right.
That means that if Penn State goes to Ohio State this next weekend instead of going to Iowa, they would be a pick 'em. And there's no way the betting line would be a pick 'em.
Yeah.
It would be Ohio State at least by 7, if not more.
The smartest thing that the College Football Playoff Committee did was when they decided we're not going to release any rankings until there's 8 weeks played in the season. And then we'll start releasing these college football playoff rankings. And then you can see. At least they give it 8 weeks to let things play out, and then we'll start from there. And then the last 4 weeks, those things change, and you wind up with your Final Four. But from the start of the season, I mean, goodness gracious, there's so many flaws in that system. So
yeah, that's for
we'll
sure.
See. These teams are sorting themselves out right now, and I think it's why college football is so great, John, because every game's so meaningful, even this early in the year. I mean, you could play yourself out of things early and play yourself back into things late. It's in college football, I guess it's always better to lose early All is
Yeah.
not lost. If you lose late, you're kind of eliminated. If you lose early, you can play your way back. Teams like Oklahoma. It's Oklahoma getting. They had everybody's attention right 3 weeks ago. Now Oklahoma looks like 15th,
Right.
16th. I don't know where they're ranked, but they haven't done anything special. We're going to find out.
Yeah, and that brings up that game you mentioned, the Mississippi game, hosting Alabama. It's been a while this early in the season that you see a matchup that you go, I just wonder if this offense of Mississippi, actually Mississippi's on the road, but that line has seen a lot of money coming in on Mississippi. Opened at 16.5, now 14.5, and obviously that hook's pretty important for a lot of reasons, including teasers. But I don't know. I mean, it's another one of those where Alabama's offense might be the best offense we've seen in a decade, and too much credit's being given to Mississippi's offense. The total for this game is now 79.5. That implies, what does that imply? That implies Alabama scoring 47 points. With a 14.5 point line and basically an 80-point total, that's 47 points that Alabama will score. And Mississippi then would score 33 or 34 to match the total. But I can tell you, if you want to know, if the market is telling us that Alabama is going to score that many points, I do have this in my notes. I think I'm like a little bit like you, Rob. I think I host shows, but even as hosting, you still have to have all the notes for what the guests want to talk about, the games, and it's
right
in process, which is going to be done anyway. But let's see, Alabama here. So just take a second to find, or maybe 3 seconds. Here, I'll get it. Yeah. The pressure of a live show.
That's all right.
All right. There, that's okay. We don't want South Alabama, do we? There we are. Yeah, I mean, this is going to be mind-blowing once I get to it. And it'll be worth the wait, because these are more of the predictive type of results. So, for what it's worth, my model actually has a lean towards the over, which is, wow. One scenario is Alabama scores between 52 and 56 points. In that scenario, Ole Miss between 30 and 34. So that obviously would cover pretty easily. Alabama's expected to gain 10 or more net passing yards per attempt. So for those that don't know the net part, that includes sacks. So more than 10 is outstanding. And Mississippi's 5-29 over the last 10 years against the spread when they've given up 10 or more net passing yards. Alabama here. All right, when they score 42 to 48 points, 25-11 against the spread. I actually don't even have it on the chart here for over 50. But it's very high. It's in the 80% range. However, in support of Mississippi, when Alabama has yielded 28 or more points, they're 1-6 over the last 3 seasons and 14-50 over the last 10. So maybe we'll see 100 points scored.
Well, we could say this. I mean, if the side and total suggests 47-33 Alabama to hit 80 and win by 14, 47, Mississippi scored 48 on Alabama last year and lost. And
That's
Alabama
right.
scored in the 60s. So 48 and lost. That game was well over 100 points. Mississippi,
crazy.
it seems to me that, they're a very difficult team because of the pace that they play and because of the effectiveness of their offense. They're a difficult team to hold under 30. Real tough. They're going to
Yep.
get the ball so many times, and they're going to execute a good portion of those times. Obviously, Alabama being a terrific defense, it would be somewhat less. But still, last year they got to 48. Now, Alabama, coming into this year, the blueprint or the read on Alabama was the defense is the anchor. The
Yep.
one thing that bothers me about this in this game where Alabama's concerned, and I'm one of those who thinks that the price has just come down too far at this point to maybe not give Alabama a personal try. It probably wouldn't make a recommendation list on my card, but just for personal betting, I feel like it's come to the point where you would take a shot with Alabama at this price tag. But the part that bothers me and the part that stops me from doing it is when they played Florida 2 weeks ago, Florida just destroyed them at the line of scrimmage. And I think maybe we were on
Yep.
this show when we talked about it, but you don't see Alabama get beat up to the tune of, the numbers here say, 258 to 91 rushing yard edge for Florida. 258 to 91. When does Alabama get outgained by 167 rushing yards? It just doesn't happen. So Mississippi is so good at running the football, so good at it, and part of that is because Lane Kiffin, when he got here, he hired offensive coordinators, and Lane Kiffin's preference, even though this is spread and it looks like he's throwing the football all over the place, Lane Kiffin's preference is to play the same style, the same philosophy that Art Briles had at Baylor, which at that time they called power spread form of air raid. There's a lot of intricacies to the air raid. Some teams are very heavy, or not heavy, but they're run-oriented. Rich Rodriguez and company believe in the run first, and there's others that are pass-oriented, like Mike Leach. Air raids are different all over the place, but Kiffin believes in power spread, and he likes to run the ball first, and boy, do they run the ball. I mean, Ely behind that offensive line, and they have breakaway backs. I mean, they're tough. It's like a thunder and lightning combo that they employ there at Ole Miss. And Alabama, in fairness to them, those numbers that they put up against Florida getting pushed around the line of scrimmage, remember, that was a week where they had linebacker issues injury-wise. 2 guys down. I think Will Richardson even played in that game, but he played hurt. And Alabama was not 100% in their front seven. And Florida, Dan Mullen's got a running quarterback, right? I mean, Emory Jones did a lot of the damage to Alabama in that game. The quarterback in that offense, there's plays drawn up for him to run the football. The RPOs, we've said it in the past, if there's one thing that gives Nick Saban defenses trouble and pisses Nick Saban off, he's talked about it in the past, it's these spread offenses with extreme tempo. He tried to, abolish it a few years back. He didn't want that. He said it was going to cause too many injuries to run extreme tempo, but it's the way you've gotten under Alabama's defensive skin over the years. Clemson did it and won a national championship with it. We just saw Florida do it a couple weeks back. We're going to see Mississippi do it again because Matt Corral he's not as fast as Emory Jones, but he is more than capable, as we see him making plays with his legs. He's a dual-threat quarterback in every sense of the phrase. So it's an interesting matchup. You get Bryce Young, second trip. He's at home in this one. He was on the road in Florida. That was in the swamp, so he gets to stay home here. They're still explosive. How far has Mississippi come defensively? Are they better? When I watch them, they're a little better. But they were horrendous. So better than horrendous against Alabama isn't all that good. But can they keep up offensively? Some people thought that they lost a lot of offensive talent. Elijah Moore is on the Jets now. Their wide receiving talent bailed a little bit last year. But, I mean, Lane Kiffin just gets guys to come to his school. And Jonathan Mingo and company's the new breed. And the sidebar, of course, to all of this is Lane Kiffin against Nick Saban. Lane Kiffin wants to beat Nick Saban. Yep. How many times was he his offensive coordinator? You see Saban on the sidelines chewing him out because Kiffin wants to do his thing as the offensive coordinator, and Saban's shoes are tied too tight, and he doesn't want to do it. Now they're
So
against
true.
one another. It's boy, if you're outside of Tuscaloosa, John, I feel like the rest of the free world really wants to see Lane Kiffin pull this off and watch it. Everybody likes to see the big wig go down, right? So we'll see. I mean, he's capable. They're more than capable. I just don't know. Power ratings made this game 20. That's some guys got 20 to open here. Some of the early shops opened 20, and it's just down, 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 down. I can understand taking it. Can Mississippi actually lose by 3 touchdowns? But it's a legitimate number because power ratings still suggest Alabama at this point is still that much better than Ole Miss. And if Ole Miss is no better defensively, Alabama will score 60 again. I don't think we have to worry too much about that. But if that offensive line is a real problem, the way Florida exposed it, we're in for a good game.
Yeah, and the defense. I'm glad you brought that up for Mississippi because they have a couple senior transfers coming in that are starting. And also, I look at a site called ourlads.com, which has some pretty good insights. And they do a good ranking of the players. And Sam Williams was a transfer from one of the community college down there. And then you have Lakia Henry. And he transferred another community college, Dodge City Community College. And believe me, folks, that doesn't mean that because it's a community college that they're not good athletes. So they're listed in the color red, which has them as a first or second rounder in the NFL. And that's something they didn't have last year. And I do trust the analysis that ourlads.com puts together. It's kind of like a scouting service of sorts. And Sam Williams was Northeast Mississippi Community College. But big guys. This Sam Williams 6'4", 260, and extraordinarily quick off the ball. And then the other thing I noticed, Rob, and maybe I'm making too much of it, just mentioning these guys because maybe Alabama's offensive line is going to overwhelm it. But we both know that you can watch the beginning of a game, such as the Eagles and the Cowboys, and you know within 30 seconds of the game who's going to win. And it doesn't matter if a team gets a defensive touchdown or not, you still know who's going to win. So the other transfer is, can't pronounce his first name, but it's Tariqious, Tariqious. So to me, that's Tariqios. I hope I'm respectfully saying that. His last name is Tisdale. Senior transfer. Northwest Mississippi Community College. He's listed as a backup to... Here, let me get back to it here. He's listed as a backup to the starter, who's a sophomore, Cedric Johnson. So do you think it's reasonable for me to be thinking that if Alabama doesn't go at speed, that Kiffin's going to be, the defensive coordinator is going to be subbing these guys to keep them as fresh as possible for all 4 quarters? I think that could be a big weapon in the fourth quarter if you have really good players as backups, which according to our lads, I'm seeing a solid backup lineup. So that was the key I was thinking too. But can you? I don't know if I have the guts to take Mississippi here. But just a little fundamental analysis.
In college football, I think if you want to just keep teams from staying fresh defensively, you just keep your same personnel on the field and go, 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 go. If you're not making a change, the defense can't make a change. So if you're Alabama and you're happy with the 11 on the field matched up against the 11 they have out there, you just don't make changes. You just run right back to the line of scrimmage. Lane Kiffin will probably do that to them more than they'll do that to
That's what I'm thinking
Ole
too.
Miss. Because Lane Kiffin is confident in his 11. He's game planned for sure. Matchups. There's no better. I would venture to say that, when you list your top 5 play callers in the country, Lane Kiffin sits in that top 5, if not at number 1. So it's going to be very different. He's heads up here with Bill O'Brien, right? Bill O'Brien's calling plays now for Alabama. And I know when, Nick Saban loses an offensive coordinator every single year. And when Bill O'Brien got this job, I know a lot of immediate thought, and I don't, Bill O'Brien just comes with a stigma attached to him, probably from the Houston Texans, and the fact that he botched stuff as a general manager. But general managers got nothing to do with the ability of this guy. Remember, this guy spent years under Bill Belichick in Foxborough. And this was the guy that was called by Penn State after all the fiasco happened there, and he had to go in with no scholarships and rebuild Penn State, and somehow, some way, he put a team together good enough to win some games that first year after everything crumbled. Gets the job at Houston. Houston, for what it's worth, was a really good offensive team. So I don't know where this Bill O'Brien's this stagnant old white dude who won't, he's going to call plays. It's his expertise, offensive football. He's not Lane Kiffin, maybe, as far as creativity is concerned, because Lane Kiffin will come at you with a lot of misdirection, reverse, double passes, all this stuff. He's more flamboyant. I get it. But let's not, bury Bill O'Brien in this matchup against a Mississippi defense. You give a guy weapons, and they become that much smarter. The better the weapons, the smarter you wind up being. On the other side of the coin, the defensive coordinators for Ole Miss that Lane Kiffin hired. I already talked about the offensive coordinator. He hired Jeff Lebby from Baylor, and they put together the Baylor system. The defensive coordinators here, DJ Durkin, is a guy who got the Maryland head coaching job and was fired before he even coached one game. I forget exactly what he did off field, or on field. It was to a player. And I never thought he'd get another job again. But Kiffin hired him here, brought with him Chris Partridge, and together they are co-defensive coordinators with a lot of experience. And the team is in the second year of these systems, so it only stands to reason they'll get better. And I'll just emphasize your point about junior college kids. Junior college only 2 years. And for anybody who sat down and watched 4 seasons of Netflix Last Chance U.
Yeah.
You get background stories on what these kids get kicked out of major colleges to begin with. They've gotten huge scholarships. They screwed up in some way, shape, or form, academically, off the field, outside school buildings. Somehow they've screwed up, and they find themselves at a junior college trying to play their way back into big-time Division I-A football. So these are not – when you're talking about these schools, yes – some community colleges are, not loaded with talent. But when you're talking about the places, the pipelines that Lane Kiffin's going to pull from, Dodge City, a well-known, well-respected community college. I think East Mississippi, I think you said Northeast Mississippi, but East Mississippi Junior College was the first one featured on Last Chance U. And Rakeem Boyd, for anybody, we were talking about Arkansas before. Rakeem Boyd was a Last Chance U guy who ended up at Arkansas after he got out of there and led Arkansas in rushing for 2 years. He's I don't know if he's on an NFL roster now or not, but got back in. So that's the type of athletes that we're talking about here. They can play. They've made mistakes. Lane Kiffin usually gets the best out of those type of guys. He's on his way up the SEC West ladder, John. How close he is what we're going to find out. I think both of us are saying, we're making counter arguments because you can make arguments for both sides. And a lot of times when you can make arguments for both sides, in my case, if I can make arguments for both sides, generally speaking, I won't blanket statement this, but generally speaking, if I can make a case for both sides, I would take points rather than lay them because I can make a heavy enough case for the underdog. A lot of people, I think, are feeling that way about Ole Miss here. And there'll be a lot of people come Saturday night with 20/20 hindsight and the I told you so's, whether Alabama or Mississippi wins. We're going to get a lot of that.
For sure. It doesn't smell like an upset, though, but the fact that the line's coming down, you don't see that too often with Alabama, as we know, and when it does, it gets your attention, and then you start studying it.
And it was early money. It was guys with pockets, deep pockets.
Yep.
And we haven't seen the buyback yet. Doesn't mean it won't happen. Doesn't mean we won't see 15.5, 16 at game time. Maybe, maybe not. But
I seriously doubt it goes to 13.5. I couldn't imagine. Then I'd be really tempted to jump on Alabama.
I had said that earlier in the week whenever I talked about Alabama and Mississippi, and earlier in the week it was already down to 14. I said, if this thing gets to 13.5, just just because you really have to take a shot with Alabama. Just because you can't move a game, and maybe it didn't deserve to be 20. I happen to trust my numbers and say it did deserve to be 20 to start with. Then you can handicap from there. But under 2 touchdowns, Alabama at home. Mississippi scored 48 last year and didn't come within. Or did they lose by 14? It might have been 62-48. Maybe they lost by 14 last year.
I think I have that here. Let's see. My data sheets are just filled with. I gotta consolidate them, I think. All right, last year. This is insane. I'm scrolling too fast and I went past it. All right, you're getting closer now. That's current season. I actually don't have it on here.
All right, let's.
Now, I'm not sure why it's not showing up. Head to head, Ole Miss is 15-14 against the spread since '92. Alabama 25-4 straight up since '92. 25 of those 38 games have gone under the total, and I'm sure none of them were lined at 80. Ole Miss 2-0 against the spread last 3 seasons.
And 63-48 last year, Alabama by 15.
I found it now, yeah. So that I can tell you, Alabama scored 63. The year before that, 59, 62, 66, 48. They lost in 2015 outright to Ole Miss, 43-37, as Alabama was a home favorite of 8.5 points. 2014, Ole Miss won again, 23-17. Alabama was a 4-point favorite.
And if we think back, John, those were the Hugh Freeze teams before Hugh Freeze got chucked out of Mississippi. And again, it's that style of offense. It was new to Saban, and it was new to the SEC back then.
Yep.
Only later did we find out that Hugh Freeze cheated to get the players in there that he did to beat Alabama, but he got the job done. He won the game. Winds up at Liberty. But, yeah, I mean, it's been a problem for Alabama. Current defensive coordinator Pete Golding, his head was being called for last year by a lot of Alabama folks. They're not necessarily thrilled with their defensive coordinator in these styles of games because Alabama doesn't always play great defense. But again, this year that defense was supposed to be their anchor because they have lost so much. 4 first-round wide receivers in the last 2 years, a couple of quarterbacks, Tua and Mac Jones, all the offensive talent that's gone, the talent across the line. I know that Landon Dickerson ended up on the Eagles. He's starting now. They've lost so much that it seemed like it's never a rebuild for Alabama. Because there's 5 stars just waiting in the wings. But it's an more inexperienced group for sure. And the defense was going to be the anchor because that was the experienced side of the ball. Florida put a dent in that theory. And if that was more truth than fiction, then Mississippi's going to put another dent in it come Saturday because they'll do the same thing. And except with more explosiveness even than what Florida had. So that's why it's so hard to bet, John, because if I actually knew or had a firm grip on that, I'd be on Mississippi. But it's always, like I say, I have to give Alabama some credit because there was short linebackers' health in that game. Maybe that had something to do with it. And I just don't know. Saban's had all week long to get in his offensive line's ear. And you know, a coach like him loves nothing more than to be outrushed 258-91 because it gives him something to coach.
Yep.
Half the time he's got nothing to coach. His players know they're the best players. But UI and Tony talked about this a lot this season. Bryce Young made $1 million before he took a snap. And now he's going to have to start earning that $1 million. And he didn't really earn it against Florida. They won the game, but it wasn't overly impressive. Let's see, right? Let's see.
And he is a true sophomore. He ain't that old, but you should see the depth. What was that?
It's his first experience in front of these types of crowds, right? I mean,
Yeah, yep,
this one's a home crowd for him, so it's easier to play in front of the home. But when he went to the Swamp,
yep.
it's tough.
Yeah,
It's tough.
first time Swamp that's why it's called that. Exactly. But Alabama has backup. This is a wide receiver, the X position, the H and the Z. So you have freshmen as backup in two of those positions. Third string is a freshman at the other wide receiver, and a starting wide receiver, Jamison Williams, is a junior transfer. So it's pretty stacked. And according to their data and analysis, they have backups on defense that will play on Sundays, and are seniors, true seniors. Jalen Moody is one name that sticks out big time, and it's amazing that a guy like that is not starting.
Well, if I'm right about this, Jamison Williams sticks out because I'll have to look up last week's box score. But Alabama in their game last week returned 2 kickoffs, 4 touchdowns in that game. And I think Williams is the kid that returned them both. I have to look at the box score.
He is the kick returner. Yep.
And I was saying this earlier in the week, Ole Miss special teams better be ready. Because Alabama found, and of course they were playing an overmatched opponent last week. We get it. But the special teams found something in their return game with this kid and with how they set him up for returns. And Ole Miss better be on their toes because I saw those kick returns. The first one I saw live, the second one I saw on a highlight. But he hit the hole and he was gone.
Oh, he's quick.
Lightning gone. So, those things come into play here too. These teams strike from all angles. That's why they might make 80 look small. They really might make 80 look small.
I think it being very bold to bet the under. And if anything, you play it in-game. And if it does start out rather slow, because you figure that's basically 21 points or 20 points every quarter to get to 80. And even half of that first quarter is gone. You might be able to get it over in the low 70s. So I'm thinking of playing it like that because it's a noon start, I think, and that would be a good way to start the day.
I was on with Ralph Michaels yesterday, and I know from doing shows with him all last year, we do a weekly college football show, and Ralph was a huge proponent last year of Alabama first half. He just mechanically bet it. No thinking involved, just I'm playing Alabama first half. And they cover. And this year, if you only count the FBS teams that they've played, they're 3-0 again first half. A lot of times, and even in the Florida game, they were up 21-9 at halftime. They only win by 2, but they were up 12 at the end of the first half. So they've been a really, really good first half team. They've been a really, really good high-scoring first half team. And if my assessment is right on this, and it'll probably give away where I'm going on this game, but if my assessment is right, Lane Kiffin they've had a bye week. It's the other good thing about Ole Miss is they've had 2 weeks to get ready for this. And if I'm right, the kitchen sink is coming out on the first series, and it's not going to stop. To me, I wouldn't, tell anybody not to play full game over, but just knowing the Alabama track record and knowing what Lane Kiffin's going to try and set the tone here, they don't want to get behind. I think first half over. You probably have to get to 21-21, and I got to tell you, you could probably get to 21-21 with 9 minutes left in the second quarter in this game.
Yeah.
So
I'm looking at that line right now, Rob. It's like looking at a Jets football game. Alabama's favored by 8. And obviously that wouldn't be the analogy to the Jets, obviously. But Alabama favored by 8. The total's 41.
Yeah, so 21-21 would get you there.
Expecting a little bit more activity and scoring in the first half. And to your point, because 8 times 2 is 16, and this line's 14.5, I think.
And it's in Alabama's nature.
Yep.
The last 2+ years to be explosive first half and lay off the gas in the second half. And Ole Miss under Lane Kiffin. And we just watched the game against Tulane where I think they put up 45, 48 in the first half that night. I forget. Now I got to go back and look that up because I know that they put up over 40 points. And again, it's Tulane. I understand. It was 40-21 at halftime. So far, they've scored. Well, we saw the opening night 26-0 against Louisville first half. So they scored 26, then they got 37, then they got 40 more first half. So both of these teams, really, the head coaches, it's their nature to from opening kickoff on to attack, and I would probably try it that way. I think 21-21 is probably worth it. And as we get closer, it's probably good it's not a night game, John, a prime time. You said it's a noon kickoff, because if it were prime time,
it's actually 3:30. I was wrong.
Okay.
That's 3:30.
3:30 start, but if it was a 7:30 start and people had that much extra time to bet into this, that total would be, not that it's not going to go up anyway, but it'd probably be 82.5, 83 by game time, because nothing's going to come in on under.
Well, especially if the betting public has lost the first 3 games they bet at the afternoon and have had 5 times as many beers as losses. That's the game you're going to go bet the over.
And I feel like everybody wants to be part of the big game. Everybody wants to be part. You have to have a bet on the big game. And so here comes the 50s, the 100s, the 25s, all those come in. And when they're all on one side, for anybody who ever stood in a line in a sports book on a football Saturday or a football Sunday, you know how deep those lines and how much money exchanges hands in those places. There's a lot of instances where if you don't get there 4 hours early, you don't sit down and watch games. You just cram your way in and struggle to watch games. So that's the type of money that would come in a night game. 3:30, it still probably will come. Friday's a big day. Friday's usually a big indicator. 3 o'clock here on the East Coast, 5 o'clock on the East Coast, 2 o'clock on the Pacific Coast. You probably see line moves. So, Alabama, Ole Miss, have at it. Have at it.
Yep. Well, let's table some of the other games till tomorrow's show. Like Wisconsin and Michigan has been talked about a lot this week. Not one of the Sports Memos TV show channels I did not include it. And universally, everybody seems to be on Wisconsin. And I think personally it's a game I'm going to stay off of, even though if I did bet it would be Wisconsin. But I don't know whether to trust Michigan, because it really, I can't trust them. I can't trust Wisconsin either. I would rather bet Maryland tomorrow night and lose money to Iowa, being wrong on my assessment of Iowa, than try to pick the upset with Wisconsin getting a point or point and a half.
Yeah, Tony Finn and I did that game for a Wager Talk panel on Wednesday night. Tony and I did that game, so it's been talked about quite a bit.
Rightfully so.
It's
a pivotal game for both programs.
So many of them this week, John. When you go up and down the board, there's at least 10 games that are very, very meaningful significance.
I remember last week on the bet on it with Marco and the Greek and Kelly. And Kelly was saying that this is the ugliest card I've seen, in so many words. And then this week, unlike last week, I really love this card. So you could see exactly why. Jesse Schull was on the one show, the college football show on Tuesdays, and was talking about Cincinnati. And there was a guy in the chat room we saw that obviously is a Notre Dame fan, and he was adamant saying that Cincinnati is going to lose by at least 30. So then Jesse writes in the chat room that if they win by 30 or more, come the next college football show, he will have real pink hair. And he says, I doubt whether Notre Dame is going to beat Cincinnati by 30, but it'd be. I actually said in the chat, I said I've never really been a fan of Brian Kelly or Notre Dame for most of my adult life, but now I am, because I would pay admission to see Jesse Schull with pink hair after losing a bet like that.
Well, they just beat Wisconsin.
We have that to look forward to. I'm sorry, what was that?
Nobody would have thought they'd beat Wisconsin by 31, right?
Yeah, and that was a
10.
weird game. That's what makes it so hard with Wisconsin, because they were winning 13-10 in the beginning of the fourth quarter. And then you have, it just came completely unglued, and then you don't know how. We're talking about 18, 19, 20 maybe 21-year-olds. And you just don't know after a emotional loss like that one how they're going to bounce back against a team that thinks they're pretty good.
Yeah, you find out a lot about head coaches in these types of games,
Yep.
and how good of motivators they are, and whether the team slips away or whether the team rallies around. And for all of these teams, a team like Wisconsin, all is not lost. It may seem like it's lost, but they played one Big Ten game. In the end, the objective is to get to the Big Ten championship game, and if you can win a Big Ten championship, you have an opportunity in some way, shape, or form to get to the college football playoff. Who knows what's going to happen from here on down the road? We might be dealing with, 6, 7 one-loss teams or 5, 2-loss teams. The way this season is going,
Yeah.
aside from Georgia, nobody seems as if they can't be clipped right now. So you just keep playing because conference play hasn't really begun. And if you have a loss, Indiana's another good example. I mean, yes, they go into a Penn State stripe out. The Penn State whiteout wasn't exactly a dominant force against Auburn. Auburn was in the game for almost the entire way. In fact, it looked like Auburn had taken the lead, and I think a penalty called back a touchdown or something. But the whiteout didn't lead to a, huge Penn State cover by 17 points. And the stripe out may not either. If you're Indiana, you have to go in there and you have to try and just absorb the crowd. And, they always say it, take that first blow because you're going to get hit with it because it's the only game on Penn State's schedule that had that gigantic red circle on it since last year. And that game, Penn State alumni, the ones that I know, if they had it their way, they'd have driven to Happy Valley and driven James Franklin across the border to Canada and dumped him there. And the hell with you because they had that game 21-20. They turn, if I'm remembering this right, they turn Indiana over on downs and get it back on like the 14, 13-yard line and immediately score a touchdown. And the thought process was you're winning 21-20 with a minute 40 left. Let's just run the clock out. We win. But
Right.
They scored a touchdown, 28-20. Indiana answered and got a 2-point conversion. Then we're in overtime. And, of course, yes, Penn State scores, but then, Indiana scores and Michael Penix gets what may or may have not have been a 2-point conversion. And Penn State spiraled out of control after that, right? They lost 5 straight games. I think they were 0-5. So this game is emotionally the biggest one Penn State's played this year, and it's the one they've certainly waited for. Indiana's a team that, they've lost to Cincinnati. They've lost to Iowa, right? Two big losses for a team that had a lot of hype coming in. But again, they're only 0-1 in the Big Ten. And if you beat Penn State, who's in your division, they're both in the East, then you're 1-1 with a win over Penn State. You're right back in it. So I don't know that Indiana, Tom Allen's a great motivator, the head coach for Indiana. He painted his head last year or shaved it bald or something crazy for the kids. So they're going to come to play. But then again, the question does become, are they within 12.5 of Penn State? And does Penn State deserve to be 12.5 with a stripe out and a red circle on the game and everything else when last week against, in 4 games this season, they haven't gone for more than 3.5 yards a carry. They can't run the football. Neither team can run the football. So Sean Clifford, Michael Penix Jr., Jahan Dotson, Ty Freifogel. Got stars all over the place, but we're going to see, John. I mean, I thought from the beginning of the year, if there was one team in the East that had a shot at Ohio State, I always thought it was Penn State. And they're just disappointing me because Noah Cain, having him back at running back, I thought would make a big difference in the running game. But that offensive line, they just haven't gotten it yet. Doesn't mean they won't run the ball as the season progresses, but as of right now, boy, they don't look good doing that, and a lot's on Clifford's shoulders. I love, I've said it here, Mike Yurcich is one of my favorite offensive coordinators.
Yep.
Any guy who says, I get off on calling plays, you got my vote. And Clifford's gotten better. So
he has.
It should be a heck
Light
of a
years
game.
Better.
Do they win by 13 or 14? That's what's necessary. That's why the point spread's the great equalizer, right? Because I could talk Penn State up all I want, but then again, they have to win by 2 full touchdowns against a team that's going to be motivated as well.
The one thing I'll mention about the game is I think you mentioned coaches that don't let go of the reins, and I think this year you can see Franklin has let go of the reins. especially in that Auburn game where Clifford threw a bomb, but the wide receiver cut off the route. And first of all, it wasn't intentional grounding because the ball actually landed in the middle of the field.
Right.
And it was simply the wide receiver cut off the route. So then it gets worse. The chain gang misses a down, and Penn State only had 3 downs on that set of downs, and they had to punt the ball, and they were, right around the Auburn 40 when all this happened. It was actually, I think, like in about the 37 when they got the grounding penalty on first down.
Right.
The refereeing was SEC officials, and I'm not suggesting that was bias, but it might not have been a good idea to have them on the road as an SEC crew in a matchup like that. I don't know if you can even have a mix of SEC and Big Ten, but and they blew calls for Auburn as well. It was not a well refereed game. Like we always say, if a good refereed game, you don't even notice the referees are there. But I was going to mention the defense, and I think I'm right on this, and we can check my my memory. But Penn State defense had not given up a scoring touchdown until Villanova, when all their starters were out of the game when it was 38-3. So I want to just quick look at that to make sure. Because what was more impressive to me is the Penn State defense than I guess it'd be a tie between the improvement of the way Clifford is running that offense, and he's not looking at one receiver, he's checking off, he's going through the progressions, and the defense of Penn State is what has really impressed me, especially in this matchup, because I think Indiana's going to really struggle to score many points. And in fact, I'd be leaning towards playing Indiana under the team total, but I'll decide that for tomorrow's show. But if you know the answer to that and can confirm it with me, we'll look it up for tomorrow's show.
Well, we can say this, that Penn State, now Noah Cain didn't play last week. Precautionary.
Right.
They rested him. They played Villanova. Against Villanova, they gained 2.4 yards a carry. I know Villanova's a good FCS team, but that's a lousy running game for Penn State, and they gave up 3 sacks. If we use the 2 games where they played really good teams, those are Wisconsin and Auburn. And just for a second, I'm going to minus out Ball State, because we know now at this point Ball State is not even a good MAC team this year. And we minus out Villanova. What we find out about Penn State is that they've run the ball for 2.8 yards a carry. Against Auburn, Bo Nix dropped back 39 times. Penn State did not sack him once. Against Wisconsin, they ran the ball 18 times for 50 yards. So that's 51 rushes against good defenses for 144 yards, 2.8 a carry. They've only gotten 2 sacks against good teams. So I think the jury is still out on Penn State offensively to lay 12.5. I don't think we worry too much about their defense, because that's been the strength of the team. There's no question. Even if I minus out Ball State and Villanova, their defensive numbers are still pretty good. They did get, line of scrimmage wasn't kind to them against Auburn. It's a 182 to 94 rushing yard advantage for Auburn. But Indiana's not going to run the ball the way Auburn does. I mean, even though Stephen Carr comes over from USC, transfer running back, they just haven't run it that well yet. Even though, in this year of super seniors, John, where the COVID allowed all these kids to come back, Indiana brought back like 19 off of a very, very good team. So either they bought into their hype too early, or they were overinflated to begin with. Some things went good for them last year that shouldn't have gone good for them. I was told, doing a Big Ten preview with Drew way back in June, these previews that we did were all dictated paragraph style, and one of the paragraphs was team to buy on, team to fade. And in that particular preview, Big Ten East, as the team to fade is probably Indiana, they're probably overvalued. And you were talking about Jesse responding to a comment section, and we get these all the time. But I mean, I was told I'm smoking crack, I'm this, I'm that. And you know, you get it. It's the Indiana fan base coming after you. But I think after a few weeks, we see that maybe Indiana is a little bit overpriced. The bandwagon that picked up all these people that threw Indiana in the top 10 to start the season, it's just a little too much. It's not that they're not good. It's just that it was overhype, way overhype. And now I think that's all been taken away. I think that bandwagon is empty. People are jumping off as we speak, and maybe 12.5 is the time to step in. Maybe it's too much. Maybe Penn State wins by 10, 27-17 is a reasonable final score there. So we'll see. We'll see. There's a lot of questions about both right now. If Penn State comes through and plays really good offensively and runs the football, then I believe they got a shot at Ohio State when the time comes, and you could see them in the Big Ten title game. Defense is no joke. Jahan Dotson is great. Jahan Dotson is a great wide receiver.
Yes, he is.
And I think the other kid last week, Parker Washington, number 3, broke loose with a couple TDs against Villanova.
Yep.
So, you know,
and they took it easy on Villanova. I mean, that's Franklin's style, not to, put crap in the face of an opponent when you know you're dominating them. But Villanova scored 2 TDs in the fourth quarter. Auburn did score a touchdown. Remember, at least one, if not 2. But I think they were through the air, and Penn State is yet to give up a ground touchdown, I think is what the stat is. But I'll confirm that tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like your bandwagon theory, it'd be fun to go through each of the top 10 teams and see which bandwagon has no availability. That would be Notre Dame and Iowa. What bandwagon team in the top 10 has seat availability is pretty cheap? Oregon, because nobody believes that Oregon should be number 3. But they are. And they really have a schedule where they could just run the table there in the Pac-12 and be in it.
Well, they certainly
the Pac-12 is pretty weak.
Remember that they beat Ohio State without their top 2 defensive players. Kayvon Thibodeau is considered the number 1 draft pick next season or next April when the draft happens. He didn't play. Their top linebacker, their second best defensive player, didn't play, and they still found a way to beat Ohio State. I'll say this: Iowa is the team that tipped over the 2 biggest bandwagons. Indiana, week 1, all the money came in on Indiana. Iowa shredded them. Iowa State. Anybody remember who Iowa State is? Because they were in the top 10. That was the first time that Iowa and Iowa State had ever played as 2 top 10 teams, and Iowa State got demolished. So Iowa's been tested and proven, again, defensively, right? Same thing I'm saying about Penn State. Same thing I'm saying about Penn State, because I still can't fathom not running for more than 3.5 on the ground against an FCS team. It just doesn't make any sense to me when you're Penn State. Your offensive line has to uproot FCS kids. It just, you have to, no matter how good they are. But yeah, Iowa's proven that, boy, they can get to you and they can do it on short fields. If they turn you over and they get the ball at 35,
that's their
it's their recipe for years, right? It's always the same thing with them. So they're hard, and we're going to learn a lot about Maryland tomorrow. Are they really any good? I know that Mike
quarterback
is recruited. Well, they think he is. But there's a lot of people who think he's a one-read wonder because that offense is simplified to no. It's a lot of slip screens. It's a lot of, what spread is. And the other side is so good defensively at taking that stuff away from you. We're going to find out if this kid has to go 2-3 reads. If they pick him off a couple of times, his head will be spinning when he comes to the sideline.
Yeah, so and then it's over.
Then it's over for him, right?
Yep. So they have to get out to a lead and have the crowd behind them.
They've recruited like crazy, John. They've got good players there. And it's why I think a lot of us upgraded their power rating, Maryland's, this year, because you just know Mike Locksley's a really good recruiter. But they're in a chess match here tomorrow with their simpleton offense against a defense that is already – how about Brock Purdy? Brock Purdy is a Heisman Trophy candidate. 0. Michael Penix is a 3-year quarterback. He shredded his knee, of course, but – he's a good quarterback. 0. We'll see what Tagovailoa can do tomorrow. It'll be interesting. If they do it, we're saying a lot of ifs, right? Because there's a lot to be proven over this weekend by these teams.
That's right. Tomorrow we'll get on some of the games that we actually have solid opinions on. But I think we have solid opinions on these games too. But there's a lot of what ifs, like you said.
Well, and I think we can counter our arguments, right? You drive yourself to one side, but then you always have to look at the other side, and you come back to the middle, and you're like, well, maybe I don't want to play that team. It's hard when you can make arguments both ways, and we don't have Tony Finn here because he's mumbling to himself backstage.
He didn't take his medicine.
We don't have him to settle these for us.
I hope him and Las Vegas Chris are listening. They usually are. But why don't we do a best bet each one of us, and then tomorrow we'll attack the NFL. And
right.
That Monday night game was just we won't even get started on it because if you're a Dallas fan, you're feeling pretty good, but then they got Carolina, so we'll any given Sunday, but we'll talk about that tomorrow.
Any given Sunday.
Yeah, that's great movie. That is a great movie. I love how it ends, too, where he basically he's announcing his retirement, and then he goes to the expansion team and takes the quarterback with him. Yeah, only in the movies.
Only in the movies.
So, in the baseball, we have the Yankees playing Toronto, and my free pick will be on Toronto. It's actually a 4%er. I can't get past that offense, and they really did take care of Mr. Cole last night. Not really took care of him, but again, the bullpen was not real solid, and they lost the game by 1 run, mainly because of that. And now Boston's only 1 game behind them. Toronto picked up the game as well because they're playing head-to-head. And it seems like it's going to come down to these three. And I was putting together a scenario where the three of them could actually end up tied at the end of the season. And then I think it happened one time in Major League Baseball history where you had this, and it was a round robin. And I'm not sure how it wasn't even round robin because then they would have played each other at least once. They had a game. The winner of that played the other team, and the other team was considered higher by probably the 20th tiebreaker. It might have been a coin flip. Who knows? I'm going to research that one because I think that has happened. But that would make it pretty hard to have a wild card game on Tuesday.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I think we get backed up by days.
Yeah, no, it would. And I heard that Major League Baseball had a playoff format worked out in case there was a 4-team tie. They didn't have one worked out for a 5-team tie, and I think Oakland got eliminated last night, so they don't have that worry right now. But like you say, you could still have Toronto, Seattle, Boston, New York. It's feasible mathematically that they all end up in a tie. And Major League Baseball does. I haven't seen it. I just heard that they have it in place if that in case is what happens. And I think, guys like us, the more games, the better. I mean, you almost root for that type of stuff to happen. But I'm sure baseball doesn't want that headache. So we'll see.
No way. And before I let you do your free pick, I just want to say thanks to Max on Record here, acknowledging my golf prowess, at least for one day. But this is a new. I've seen his name in here before, like within the last week. So he's a new member of the chat. So I wanted to give him a little shout out here for asking us this. And it's a parlay, and we don't have our parlay king, Mr. Finn, in because he had a 3-teamer last night that hit. But Marlins are playing the Mets, right? And then the Tigers, and then Yankees and Blue Jays under 8. It sounds like this is coming from BetMGM because they have those. They put together these parlays that are very tempting, with the big plus 654 return. Initially, the one I don't like is the under Yankee Blue Jays because with those offenses, I don't think you can bet under, and it might be right. The under might be the right play, but with both those lineups and the ability of them to hit home runs, at any point in the lineup. I think I would change that to the over, but that's just a suggestion. I really don't have any opinion other than the one game I mentioned with the Toronto Blue Jays. Do you have any thoughts on? I know you and I don't really like two-team parlays, let alone three.
Yeah, just to separate them out, I'll get to your Yankees and Blue Jays under. I think if you were going to play that, that means you're putting a lot of faith in Robbie Ray and Corey Kluber. And in that case, I'd almost rather play the first five under if that's why you like the game. Those guys are probably guaranteed to go five and pitch well.
Good
Robbie
point.
Ray's pitched well all season long. Total there is 4.5. I'd probably, if I was going to play it, but we saw last night, John, there's lightning capability in both of those lineups. I mean, one pitcher could throw really, really well, and the other could get slammed. It's kind of what happened last night. Barrios was throwing real well, but Cole was getting hit, and
Yeah.
I feel like it was 5-1 Blue Jays before the Yankees tied at 5-5, right? So,
Yep.
it's dangerous with both lineups like that. Marlins and Mets, betting against Rich Hill. I can't talk anybody off that at this point in time. I don't know what Rich Hill's going to do out there tonight against
I'm surprised he was
the Marlins.
even starting.
And Tigers money line. Just for those who don't know, not John Ryan, but Joe Ryan, the pitcher for the Twins, was on the Olympic baseball team and really highly touted. And when you go through his history, he's been a really, really good strikeout pitcher. So I think last game he wound up striking out or 2 games ago, 12, 13, something like that. And he's not a flamethrower, which is the interesting part about this guy. He's so good at location, and he's only about 92 miles an hour max. But his motion, his mechanics trick a lot of hitters. And, when you're seeing guys for the first or only the second time that are brand new like this, that are somewhat tricky in their delivery, it's tough. So I don't know that I would bet against Joe Ryan. I like Scooble for the Tigers, been pretty good all season long. He's going to be better in the future, but I don't know that I would like to bet against Joe Ryan. What I will say is this. Shane Bieber goes tonight for the Indians. I'm going to play first five because he's on a pitch count. He threw, I think, 36, 37 pitches the first, somewhere in that vicinity, mid-30s. And the Indians stated they want him to throw maybe 12 more before they pull him here. So they want to have him around 50. They're hoping that he's efficient enough to get that through 4 innings. It might only get him through 3. He's pitching against the first-time rookie, Angel Serpa, a kid who started in A-ball this year, A to AA, and then a couple weeks ago they gave him a AAA start. His numbers are not overly impressive. He's the 19th rated prospect inside the system. The ERA, I think in A-ball was 4.5, and it got no better in AA. It was still in the mid-4s, and then he had one start in AAA where I think he went 3 innings and allowed 3 runs. So he's a lefty that the Royals, I guess, they just want to look at here. Not going to get a lot out of him innings-wise. Hopefully, in my case, Cleveland hits him hard right away and knocks him out of the box before they can take him out of the game. And then you'll see a lot of Kansas City bullpen. So I think first 5, Shane Bieber is a pretty good edge. More than 15 cents I'm asked to lay here. They're going to give you Bieber minus a half a run. I'm not going to play money line. I'll play run line. Minus half a run, minus 115. And figure that Shane Bieber, who did throw real well in those 35, 36, whatever pitches last time, continues on in his rehab here and does the job. First 5 innings, Cleveland Indians. I need to be ahead by 1, so hopefully they hit Serba pretty good early and I don't have to sweat it out, so to speak.
I hope that helped Giuliano out there with his question. We appreciate the question. James Little asked about UCLA, Arizona State. I said we'll break that down first part of the show tomorrow and then get into the NFL. Before I let you go, do you have anything to promote over there at Wager Talk?
We're in action for tomorrow's football already, John. So you can pick that up right now. It's a 4% best bet in tomorrow's college football action, wagertalk.com. I guess I should promote what Wager Talk is promoting, which is the October special. For those of you who purchase the month of October. They've cut that down to $269. You purchase today, you get the remainder of September, you get all of October. What's good about getting all of October is that both basketballs are going to start in October. So you're going to get NFL. You're going to get, at least in my case, I don't do hockey, so I'll tell you what you would get. John, I don't know if you handicap hockey or not. If you do,
Rarely.
they'll get even more from you if they do. But NFL, college football, Major League Baseball the rest of the weekend, Major League Baseball throughout the playoffs, NBA, and college basketball. So that's 5 sports. There's no month that's packed more than October as far as
5 weeks
availability and what the card is like. I mean, you're getting 5 sports almost. When college football gets to the Wednesday and Thursday and Tuesday and all the MAC stuff, you're getting, cards every single day that are, 3-4 sports deep. So once again, that's a Wager Talk special offer to all. You can get it by going to any of our home pages at Wager Talk. $269, all sports, every play. It doesn't jip you a 5% rate. If we release it, you get it. End of story.
Yep.
It'll come to you right away. You get an alert as soon as we release it, so you get the best of the line. If you don't, that's on you, because we're getting it to you as fast as we can, as soon as we like it. So once again, I would go to wagertalk.com, scroll down, find my home page, and purchase the October special. I don't think you can go wrong.
I have a 5%er going tonight in college football, and coming off a big winner with Colorado State. Plus 23.5, actually beating Iowa, by the way.
At halftime,
but that one came up on the model, and I immediately loved it because, granted, they have a very good defense, but Colorado State, I think, caught them in a maybe a look ahead.
A good moment, yes.
So they covered by 13.5. It was one of those relaxing big bets that you release because you don't want to lose for all the people that are buying it, because then we're humans. We feel bad. We want to give you our very best. So and keep in mind, folks, too, these monthly specials. It's 5 weeks now for October. So the way the calendar moved this year, you're basically getting an extra week, because September was a little bit on the shorter side than it normally is. If that makes any sense. So you're getting even more opportunity because the seasons are starting when they're starting. So that's a no-brainer, absolute no-brainer. So we have Toronto tonight as my pick. We have Bieber first 5 -0.5 -110 from Rob, and unfortunately we never got a free pick from Tony Finn. But he did mention a team that had 3 names in it, but I never had heard what team that actually was. But maybe we'll have him on tomorrow, I'm sure. Tomorrow is Friday. Friday's usually a pretty full day here. So on behalf of Rob, myself, WagerTalk.com, SportsMemo.com, and these Predictive Playbook shows at Manny's Irish Pub, may all the wins be yours.